Hello and welcome back to the CAD and 3D printing tutorials. Previously, we completed our mug by adding our handle, as well as adding our new work plane and adding a trapezium to the bottom of our mug by using a loft. In this video, we're going to talk about 3D printing your piece. So, before we begin, Ultimaker Cura is going to be the software that we were going to use. If you watched the previous video, you will have seen the link, ultimaker.com, where you can download the software for your specific device. In addition, 3D printing is a fairly easy thing to learn. Ultimaker Cura's menus are very easy to navigate. They make it very simple to find out exactly what you want to do to your model. Finally, this is the final video in the CAD and 3D printing series. Once you finish watching this video, you'll be well equipped to be creating your very own 3D objects. So, with all that being said, let's jump straight in to our Autodesk Inventor. So, if you remember from last time, here's our mug with our trapezium on the bottom. And to be able to 3D print this, we need to change the file type. So, we go up to File, and we're going to go down to Save As. So, what has to happen now is we need to change it from a .ipt file, as you can see, which it's currently saved at. We need to change this to a .stl. What's happened here is you can see I'm trying to change from .ipt to .stl. It's not working. For some reason stl is not showing. So instead I'm going to just type in CAD model.stl. You can just type in the file type and it automatically registers that you want to change which file type you've saved as. There we go. So we now save it as a .stl by clicking save. We'll make sure it's in all files just to make sure that it will save as an STL. We press save. And then you will see that Inventor changes it to have all of these awkward little lines on it, as this. So what this does is it chunks their model down into different individual pieces that Cura can read to turn into a 3D object. So what we want to be doing next is we want to be going to Ultimaker Cura. So I'll catch you over there in just a second. So here we are, we're in Ultimaker Cura. So as you can see, this will be the workface that you originally met with this little box here where your model will be placed. To get to the screen, you have to first make sure you're on an Ultimaker S3 file type. The printer that we use is the S3, but to get here you have to use the Manage Printers. You have to ensure that the Ultimaker S3 is in your preset printers, and then once you've done that, you will be met with a screen. Next, we want to open our files so we can bring in our 3D object. We navigate to where we've just saved it to previously from Inventor. As you can see, here's mine here. And we've got it as a standard tessellation language or STL file. This then places our STL into this little box here. It's very crucial to make sure that your entire model is actually within this box. Anything outside of the box will not actually be printed. So now that we have our model in, what we can do is we can actually rotate this. Rotating is a very fun tool, but it's also incredibly useful. Rotating your model changes the amount of time that it can take to print, so you want to make sure that your model is in the correct orientation to minimize the amount of time to print. You can use the arrow keys and the scroll wheel to change how you view the model in the software. You can use the arrow keys, you can hold them to create almost like a video rotating around your object. You can use the scroll wheel, you can scroll in and out to zoom in and out, as well as holding in the scroll wheel to move it around where your object sits on your screen. Once we're happy with how it looks on our screen, we're going to go over to the left hand menu and we're going to use what's called the scale feature. Scaling our object can change the size to make sure that it's going to be a more reasonable time to print. As you can see at the moment, our model is massive. This is not good enough. We want to make sure our model is at a reasonable size to be able to print. On the left hand side of our screen here, you'll see these menus. These allow you to change the scale as well as a lot of other different things. We're only interested in the scale for now. As you can see, it brings up this menu here with a percentage scaling and the exact dimensions. You can change either, but it's easier to just use the percentage scaling to make sure that all of your dimensions are exactly how you want them to be. We're going to make ours 50% of the size, and as long as uniform scaling is turned on, when we press enter, the whole model will change to fit your exact scale. As you can see now, our model takes up much less space. This is a very good thing because it will prevent the model from taking longer to print, which means it will also use less plastic. What we want to do next is come up to this top right hand menu here. This allows us to add what's called supports to our model. Supports are a very crucial thing, especially when you have parts such as our mug which overhang. The 3D printer is not actually able to print unless it has something it can build onto. So what it does is it builds its own supports where it can go up and build those overhangs. By making sure these are turned on, it allows the printer to actually build parts of our model that it wouldn't have been able to before. Up at the top here, you'll see that we do actually have two different nozzles. Our printers actually can use two different pieces of material to print our models. We have plastic and PVA. PVA is a water-soluble material, which means if we build our supports out of it, we simply just need to wash our model and the supports disappear. So we will change it over to PVA, but for this, just for simplicity, I'm going to leave it on generic PLA because I'm not actually going to be printing anything to save plastic. So I'll navigate back in, we're going to change back to generic PLA. With that being said, we move on to the next part of 3D printing. You'll notice down here in the right hand corner we have the slice button. Slicing your model allows the Ultimaker Cura software to put your model into multiple different layers to allow the printer to build it up. So when we press slice, it's going to make different layers that are going to allow it to create the model. So this sometimes takes a second, but once it's finished, you'll notice it has given us the time 12 hours and 53 minutes with 102 grams of plastic, so much plastic. So what we can do, just to quickly show you exactly what's going on, why it uses so much plastic, is we'll go to preview and we'll change it so we can see each individual layer that gets built. You can see as I drag this slider up, this is exactly how the printer is going to build our model. You can see on the left hand side of it, next to our handle, the blue supports, which will be built using PVA. To make sure that we use less plastic, we can use the tool called Infill. Reducing the infill reduces the amount of excess plastic whilst maintaining structural integrity of our model. After any alteration like this, you must always re-slice to make sure that the model knows exactly what it needs to be printing. So, once we finish slicing once again, you'll notice that our time has changed from 12 hours down to 7 hours and 30 minutes and 41 grams of plastic. This is a much more reasonable time and amount of plastic to be using for a model like this. So, to go back through our layers again, you can see nothing really has changed from face value, but by changing the infill, it uses less plastic to build our big trapezium at the bottom, as well as the interior walls of our mug. Next, just to make a point about the rotations, what we're going to do is we're going to rotate our model, just lie it face down. And what's going to happen when we slice this is that the time is going to have increased, probably quite substantially. So we press slice, and now, once it finishes this, we'll see that now we're at 11 hours and 8 minutes and 54 grams of plastic. To show you why, we will go back to preview and we will check each individual layer once again. And you'll actually see that in the middle of our mug, now it needs to build a bunch of supports to build the roof of our mug. This obviously will use more plastic, which is where the extra plastic comes from and hence the extra time. The original rotation that we had was originally so much better because not only did it require less plastic, it also required less time. So, as you can see, sometimes the rotation can be a little bit fiddly. I'm trying to there we go. So, again, turning it in this direction isn't actually going to change it much, as you can see, because our model is already in a fairly good orientation. So when we slice this, the time may have gone up, but probably only marginally. Once we finish slicing, you will see that we've gone from 7 hours and 30 minutes to 7 hours and 36 minutes, with 42 grams of plastic. To show you what I meant about the infill, we're going to look at our mug from the top down, and we're going to remove the layers just to see exactly what the infill does. So we'll go down to, say, this layer here. Nah, we'll go with this one. And now we'll go scroll up to the top of our model, and you'll notice this net of triangles. Because we changed our infill, we have this netting which keeps the integrity of our model, whereas if we'd had the 100% infill, we would have had just an entire block full of plastic. It is always good to note that for infill, it's recommended to keep it to probably about 20%. This doesn't harm your model and it uses less plastic, which is a win-win. So, once we're happy with this, we save it to our removable drive or to your desktop. It just depends on what you've got plugged in. I'll eject because I have a USB plugged in at the moment. And now we have successfully saved our model. You can then bring this on to the printer and it will begin the printing process. So, with all of this being said, that brings us to the end of our 3D printing tutorial. So, now that we are ready to print our full model, that's everything that you need from this series. As always, here's our links that you'll be able to find extra information on that might help you with creating your model. And I will hopefully see you in another video series. With that being said, thanks for watching, goodbye.